Leave.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We have the opportunity tonight to introduce a beautiful couple, John and Carrie Vajko, and they are some dear friends of ours, and we just are grateful to be lifelong learners along this beautiful couple. Carrie and John, do you guys want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
And hi, Grace.
Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you for gathering all of us.
Thank you for coming together and for your willingness to share your experiences and how you've been able to make use of the coach school. And so out of curiosity, Carrie and John, what were some of the reasons you said yes to coach school originally?
Yes. So I will share for me, and then are you good to share then?
Yeah.
Perfect. Give you time to think.
Yep.
So I think the big reason why I personally felt led to sign up is because I had mentors in my life that reached out to me and they said, I think this would be a good asset to your business, like to see your business accelerate. But then I also see how this could be a benefit for both you and John, of how this can also have a positive impact on your communication as well. And we had seen that come through in like the mentors that we had were like sharing their experiences that they've had as a couple, and then just in their business, of how like it's changing from more me telling you what you should do over me asking questions, really. And from their like guidance, it was almost like a no-brainer. We just made it work in our budget to be able to do it, and it's been a huge blessing that you guys will get to hear about shortly. But John, what really inspired you to sign up for coach school?
Well, it was Carrie was already doing it, and so I was like, okay, there's something, and I think also Christian Cornish spoke very highly of it, and so by word of mouth, I heard that it helped him not only like in his marriage or with helping with Mary Kay, but it helped him on a work doing his work or parenting and what, like in every aspect of life.
Oh, so what I'm hearing is that people that you hold, both of you hold in high regard, recommended it, and that you were also witnessing how they were using these skills in their business and their relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was supportive that Carrie was going. So John was like, let me take a look at this. Yeah, thank you both for that. Marnie and Brian, what question would you like to ask of Carrie and John?
One thing I was curious to know more about is how you've seen your communication with each other, how you've seen it enhanced since attending coach school together.
I think it's definitely increase in our level of like wanting to communicate with each other, of instead of just assuming a lot of things about different things that are going on, it's asking the clarifying questions. It's asking even like to coach myself through a situation, or to even put myself in his shoes of like, okay, he may be feeling this, or what are the questions that I can ask to like figure out what he may be feeling, so I can therefore cultivate empathy and we can come to a solution together in different situations. And I think the biggest thing for me has been the like personal self-coaching, because when I get better, we get better. And as we are both pursuing God soloing individually, it grows us closer together as a couple. So when I'm able to like ask myself the questions of like, how can I better serve my husband today? Or how can I show up as a better wife and mom today? And what would that look like to carry out? What practical way would that look like today to do that? It really just puts into a frame of reference of I'm here to serve my family and the people I work with, and it's not ultimately about me. What about you?
For me, definitely not jumping to conclusions, not assuming that like, what if she didn't say like, what if I didn't take it as like the way she said it, or like, what if I didn't like see it in a different light? And so like asking those, the self-coaching questions, asking clarifying questions, and um, to get like right down to what we're trying to communicate, because we don't always communicate exactly what we want to say every single time we put words out into space. There's an example.
Yes. 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 Oh my goodness. It makes me think of this beautiful quote by Nelson Mandela. And he said, when we speak in a way that people can understand, we speak to their minds. When we speak their language, we speak to their hearts. And so what I'm getting the sense of is so it's our intention. Your intention was to communicate in a certain way. And sometimes the airwaves between intention and then the landing get a little jumbled there. And so that self-coaching of, okay, well, knowing Carrie, what was her intention? Or knowing John, how could I frame this in a way that would serve him better, best? So it's that ongoing dialogue within ourselves, so that we're being responsive in our relationship versus reacting to what they said and maybe didn't even intend,
Right.
or vice versa.
Right.
Oh, that's so.
I think shortly developed a quote around that I was just like, I'm like, oh, what we receive isn't always what we perceive.
We give you a
Right.
that's hot. That's hot. Okay. Receive versus perceive. Yeah. Okay. What's coming to the surface for you, Brian, that you would like to ask of Carrie and John?
John, I'm curious for you how your experience was coming to coach school, because oftentimes, I mean, I've been to a number of coach schools, and many of them are, every one of them is unique. Always, though, I'm really glad that Marnie introduced me to it, and I always take something away from it, especially in regards to, like self-awareness, and like Carrie, you talked about that self-coaching. So how I can show up for Marnie, for our business and things like that. But that's my experience. John, I'm curious how it has been for you going into it, and how it met your expectations, things like that.
I had no categories for coaching or coach school. It was wholly new to me. I went to college for a very scientific, like had like very in-depth, like very just logical, like hypothesis, and go test the hypothesis. And so I mean, I went into engineering, and mostly because my social skills weren't there. And so like going to coach school helped me establish like better like conversation skills, but then it also kind of like set me on a path of like, over the last, has it been 3 years since we gone to coach school? Over the last 3 years, just really just understanding like myself, so that I can like really communicate better, but also like understand like psychology and philosophy and whatnot of like these more soft science that I didn't quite understand, because it kind of like, I set me on this trajectory to understand more of the emotional health aspect of of myself and then also of Carrie.
Wow. Yeah. So it's almost like it exposed you to an entirely different way of thinking than how you were professionally and academically trained.
Yes, very much so.
That's neat.
Thank you for that. What do you think would be, what would you like to share that would be important for people to know when they're considering coach school?
I think the thing that like right away when it comes to any sort of decision, so whether coach school or any sort of like next step that you're choosing to take in your life, I think a great question to ask yourself is, what would my life look like if I said yes? Another question I would ask myself is, what is holding me back from saying yes? And trying to figure out, is it really a financial thing? Is it honestly a financial thing? Or can you find the money, you're just using that as a different reason to cover up? Is it I'm not willing to invest into my marriage or my relationship with myself, or to like to leave a legacy for my kids? But then for me, I really do look at, like, if this is an investment, I look into the future. That's one of my top strengths, and look into, how is this not going to just impact John and I, or even me personally? How could this impact generations to come? Because I think that's the biggest thing that John and I have both seen, is that we are breaking generational cycles of how we were raised. And not saying that our parents did a bad job by any means. They did what they did. They did what they could with the means that they had. And now that we know better, we do better. And now that we have these skills, we get to pass it on to the next generation, and then they get to pass it on to a generation. So we're just creating like kingdom disciple makers who, no matter what they choose to go into, they're going to be raised with this more elevated understanding of life that will serve them in whatever career they choose. So for me, when people are considering, it's asking those a couple questions of, what is holding me back from saying yes, or what would I miss out on if I say no? And then what really is holding me back from saying yes, and getting deeper. And then for me, or for anyone else who's listening, is how could this impact generations to come?
Wow. What I appreciate about that is it's an expansive question. There's so many layers to that question, and even how that could be a tool, just as you said, around this decision and many decisions in life. Like really being an elevated understanding of self. What is prompting the no, the hesitation, or the resistance, and then what would make me feel centered, or willing to say a yes around this, whatever that may be. Very helpful self-coaching questions, Carrie. Thank you for that. I think that that's a wonderful thing to consider when contemplating a decision around anything in life. What about for you, John? What's coming to the surface for you as people are saying, gosh, I'm not sure if this is for me, or I'm not sure if I would want to do this, or what are some of the benefits of doing a coach school at all?
Well, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Don't know it, know it. You don't know that you don't know something until you know it. And therefore, like, you may not see the benefit initially because you're like, oh, I don't even have a category for this, as like I did. But like, it still helped me, because it's not just for one career. It's not just for one avenue of like to go down. It's helpful no matter where you are, no matter where you are in life, no matter where you are socially, no matter where you are economically. Like, it has benefits anyone and everywhere.
Wow, That's such a valid point. So it's not like, okay, this is the one place in life that this will be useful. It's there's a vastness to the impact. And then we don't unlearn things. So once we learn them, and then we're willing to practice and make that practice permanent, that gets to walk, that's like a part of our journey. Yeah. What other questions are coming up for you and Brian, Miss Marnie, that we could ask Carrie and John
Well,
around
I
their
just
experience?
thank you guys for sharing. It's such a joy to see how the skills that we learn have impacted you as a couple and even how you're using them through parenting your children also. And like you said, Carrie, to think about the impact over generations, over your future and your family's future. And it's almost like, you've learned these skills and applied them in your own home with the people that mean the most in your life. And then you're also applying them outside of your home in your jobs and in your businesses. So I was curious to know more about how you're using these skills in your professional fields.
Yes. So I'm gonna so in my professional field, so I'm in the online freelancing space, and when people come to me with like different questions on like businesses, so I'm kind of like, you want to start a business, don't know what, let's kind of chat about this, and kind of see what could be a good fit. That's where a lot of those questions are really going to come up of, okay, I believe to my core that you have the answers and you have the greatness inside of you. I'm just going to ask the questions to draw it out. Because if I tell you something, like, you're doing it because, well, Carrie said so, or Carrie thinks it's best, where it might not be in alignment with what is actually true for you. So because of what I've been able to do, the skills I've learned through coach school, people come to me as like, okay, she's going to ask good questions. She's going to listen to what I'm saying and then ask the questions so that I can come to an answer. So I've seen that play out with people just asking me, like, should I do this? Should I do this? Or I'm stuck in what I should do for my course, like my business course that I want to do. What does that look like? And I don't know what that looks like for Kaylin, but I can ask her questions to draw out what is it that would set her up for success for this next business venture that she has. And that's provided more income for our family because we've been able to take this avenue. But ultimately, in the past, it would have been, oh, I'm so grateful people are taking my advice and looking to me, and Carrie's so smart and so wise. And now it's they're championing themselves to say, oh, I came up with this idea. I love this idea. This feels great for me. And I'm just sitting in the back like, yeah, you did that. Like, I'm just a facilitator. I'm just asking questions. And then I'm giving them the power to come up with the conclusions themselves. And it feels so right with them. It feels so much more in alignment. And then they're more excited than I could ever be for them because the idea came from themselves and not from any outside source.
That's so good. There's so much richness to that, Carrie. I mean, one thing that I've recently learned is how with coaching, we get to be a guide on the side. And the person that we're coaching and serving and contributing to in this manner, they are the star on the stage. So we're the guide on the side, they're the star on the stage. And that's an example of what you just shared of they're coming up with their own answers. They're loving them. They're feeling like, yes, I know this stuff. And again, that's where that confidence and competence, that's where it begins to grow. Oh, I have the answers. Oh, I am competent. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be this. Wow. Thank you for that. Such a great question as well, Marnie. Thank you for asking that and for sharing, Carrie. Such wisdom. What about for you, John? Same question.
What was the question?
How
Around
do you do it professionally? So you can think about like as you're crafting sermons.
So yeah, for me, it doesn't, in my day job, it doesn't show up too often, because I don't really use it. But like I am in transition right now of developing my craft as a preacher. And so I've been given the opportunity to write a sermon for our youth group. And I can really like um, using coaching questions to make them think about the subjects I lay out is very like will help them not only like, oh, he speaks like, okay, he said something that was really cool, but then because they're engaging their minds through a coaching question, that lesson will stick with them longer.
Wow. So using where I'm hearing it is using it in your preaching as a preparation tool, as well as it sounds like a delivery tool as well, where uh, they're a part of it's an experiential experience. Yeah. And then it stays with them. The message stays with them and it becomes easier to remember. And that's something that I think is important to share is that with preaching or teaching, we can be an exceptional teacher. I mean, we have voice inflection, we have props, we've got stories, metaphors, quotes, and all of these fancy schmancy things going on. And if we're solely teaching and training, it's approximately 22% retention and application of the information. When we bring coaching into our teaching, preaching, training, facilitation, what we're doing is we're increasing that retention and application to 88%. So it becomes 88% retention and activation of the concepts. That's where, just as you said, the teaching becomes memorable, experiential, it's lasting. So what final thoughts or ideas would you be open to sharing for those that we're going to be sharing this good news with? Final thoughts or comments?
I really just say go for it. I mean, our marriage is not the same that it would have been a couple years ago. And I will say this, I think there is true value in going as a couple because I personally was just approached about the opportunity. And then it was more of like, wait, I really think John would benefit from this. Or maybe we were preached like come at different angles, but I think that was the biggest part is that we came into it together and unified. So that way we were learning at the same time because there were times after it where John picked up on something that I did not. And he goes, I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, this is coach school. Like, let's kind of let's talk about this. We've already gone through this. And I'm like, what? I don't remember. I don't remember that. And he'll show me in our booklet where it was. And, but it's nice to have that because we'll pick up on different things. And then coming together unified as a couple, we'll implement them either in our parenting, in the work we do together, in the work we do professionally, and then even in our marriage. So I think if you're considering it for yourself, I want you to like really dig deep and ask yourself, how could this then benefit you as a couple to be unified in your communication going forward? Because then you're just like modeling that for your children. Because it's a little difficult when one person is talking one way and the other person's like, why are you talking like that? That doesn't make any sense. Stop doing that. Like it's not helpful. But when you both come at it as a unified angle, you're able to make lasting change, both us together, and then for the generations to come.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, that's so powerful of how you're learning together in unison and learning and growing together. And to be able to have access to that with each other. So what is your willingness to coach me around this situation and circumstance? Whereas sometimes it may have been, I want to talk to you about this, and one person wants to talk and they're saying, I want to be coached. They're just not articulating it that way. And then the other person's saying, oh, they want my advice. Okay, let me tell you what to do and how to do it, and let me fix this for you. And the person's like, no, that's not what I thought. So there's this back and forth going on. Everyone's intention was good. It now though, what I'm hearing is like it solidifies this common dialogue, this in sync language that you can utilize with each other, so everyone's on the same page. This, especially this most precious relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about for you, John? What would be your advice or your thoughts?
Initially nothing came to mind, but when you were just talking there, I just like, oh, right. Like we don't automatically like jump to conclusions. We like we have that heartfelt, like we have that heart-centered listening where we actually listen to what they're saying rather than like trying to formulate what I'm going to rebuttal with. Because like for me it comes naturally. Like I'll preach at you all day long because like I know exactly where in the Bible where you should say, oh, like let's not be anxious, because that's what Paul says in Timothy. And so like obviously you need to stop being anxious, and this is the reason. Like this is what you do. You do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And like that's not helpful in that situation. It's you're just pushing away versus like where questions kind of like engage, they bring back, and he's like, well, I wasn't actually being anxious in that moment, I was actually just nervous. And like I'm like, and so it's just like, yeah. Mhm.
Wow. Um, so without jumping to conclusions. So in the past, there may have been a jump to a conclusion, whereas I'm hearing the heart-centered listening to one another, not to respond, listen to hear, listen to be present, listen to honor our spouse. Yeah. Wow.
And I'll
That's
be honest. I'll be honest. Like this was just this past Sunday. Like I'm still working on this stuff of trying to like actually listen to Carrie, where like I'm not just like, okay, let's jump to conclusions and like I'm gonna preach at you. And Sunday was a rough day, and so yeah.
And coming with that of like the grace to handle that then too, of like we're still in the process of figuring out, we have not arrived, but at least now we have the tools to work through those things when we don't act the way that we know we should, both of us, but yet we know the tools to go back and restore what could have like broke something, but we have the tools to go back and really restore our the situation and our relationship as well.
Thank you for your transparency. And yes, it's not about arriving. Once we've arrived, we're at the gates. So I mean, that's like once I've arrived, I'm at the gates. And yeah, so we're the willingness. It's almost like there's a willingness to say, I'm still learning. I'm still practicing. I'm still refining. Iron sharpens iron, and when one iron is sharp and the other one is not exposed to similar instances, how can we sharpen each other? How can we iron sharpen iron in that instance? So what I'm hearing too is that restoration, like we have the tools to restore, versus this is broken, I'm not sure how to fix it, let's just call it a day. Or let's just stay together separately.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Marnie and Brian, what are your final thoughts on all of this?
I just appreciate you guys just so much about what you shared is, it echoes experiences that we've shared as a couple. And it just gets me excited to continue on this journey, because just like you, I can think of 10 things I did last week that are opportunities to do better this week. And John, what I so appreciate about your example is the self-awareness that comes from being willing to go into coach school and then being willing to evaluate my natural tendencies, what I'm comfortable with, how I'm comfortable communicating, in contrast to what might be best for the other person. And what a loving way to communicate out of a desire for what's best for them in that situation. In your example, asking questions that engage and invite, as opposed to my natural comfort tendency is. And so how that self-awareness just opens up and fosters so much growth internally and together. That's just inspiring. I love hearing that stuff.
Yay. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you, Grace.
Oh my goodness. It was such an honor to hear your collective experiences. And thank you, Carrie and John, for your willingness to share your wisdom, what you've walked through, how you've been able to make use of your investment of time and treasure. And this is that what I appreciate too is that this is an ongoing practice. Isn't like, okay, we're going to go in and get a boost at coach school and then hope that boost lasts for a lifetime. It's like, wait a second, I'm still working on this. I'm still refining it, as I think we all can attest to. So thank you. May you continue to be favored and favorable in so many ways and bless many lives in your journey, because you said yes to something that you thought would serve generations to come. So God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we look forward to seeing you in some place and in, someplace, somewhere, sometime, to be able to share the good news with you so that you can have access and learn some of what John and Carrie were sharing and Marnie and Brian were sharing about their experience. Have a blessed and abundant week, everyone. Thank you.